Like thousands of young drivers around the state this week, 22-year-old Amy Bradfield is having last-minute lessons, hoping to pass her practical driving exam before July 1.
I think so I don't have to have my Ps for 3 years. I mean, it doesn't bother me if I do, but saves a lot of hassle, I think.
They're all trying to beat the deadline of the 30th of June. However, they fail to understand that this new system comes in to save their lives.
The traditional P-plate licence for 12 months is being replaced with a 3-year provisional period, but the concept of just the existing red P-plate for 3 years is far from the truth. It's a graduated scheme.
Under the new system, P-plate drivers will undergo annual tests and will be required to drive under a range of road conditions as well as filling out a logbook. And it's young people that are most at risk on our roads. While 17 to 25-year-olds represent just 16% of all licensed drivers, they're involved in almost 30% of serious crashes. But the tough new laws have attracted a mixed reaction from experienced motorists.
I can't see that much is going to be achieved by it. I think the present restriction's adequate.
I mean, I had accidents when I was that age, so perhaps it would be a good thing that they perhaps have a bit more experience before they're allowed to go faster.
We should make it tough and should make them better road users and be able to cope with all the difficulties on the road.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
They're not quite on a par with the regular Olympic Games. For a start, the athletes are 5 years old. 70 students at Waratah Public School competed in their own mini-Olympics, the culmination of a 6-week program with the University of Newcastle, designed to develop their motor skills.
We're looking at it both locomotor, so the skipping, the hopping, the galloping, the running, and then the basic sports-related skills such as striking and kicking and throwing and catching.
Research suggests more than 50% of children aged 5 to 12 in New South Wales don't have those basic skills. Dr Thompson attributes that statistic to technology. These days, Nintendo games are far more popular than backyard cricket. The school has run the program with the university for 10 years, with benefits for all involved.
Our teachers benefit by associating with these students. The students benefit by having practical experience.
They'll be more inclined to be involved in physical activity, and it will track into adult lifestyles. And yes, the spin-off is healthy young Australians.
Catherine Turner, NBN News.
Just from the way the pan sizzles, it's obvious Anna Phillips knows her fish, though it's not always easy to convince people what you can do with seafood.
Whenever we do things like squid or whatever, the number of people that will cook squid, and you sort of say as soon as it hits the pan and it goes from being clear to white, it's cooked. And you can say that can be 30 seconds and they'll just look at you.
Her goal is to get people to try more with their cooking.
So today we've actually cooked up some ludrick, which a lot of people might remember as blackfish, flathead, which has been around forever and it's a great eating fish, and we've also cooked another fish called latchet.
The results speak for themselves.
It was lovely and I really enjoyed it. I'm not a big fish eater, but I did eat that fish today, so it was great.
No matter what you buy, it's like fruit and vegetables. If you buy things in seasons, you're going to get a much better buy. So yes, that's what we're trying to say. So we've come up from Sydney and we're here to support the Newcastle Fish Co-op and basically get people eating a lot more fish than we do. It's such good food.
While it's not quite damage control, the Knights know their image isn't the best, but the long road back started today.
In general terms, we know that it could have been handled differently, but you've got to make your decisions and you live and die by them.
Most recently, efforts have been made for an extraordinary meeting to be called for a vote of no confidence in the board, with a petition expected to be delivered to the club next week. And business at the Knights Leagues Club could be better too. Staff have begun contacting people who have functions booked there later in the year to look elsewhere, with the growing possibility the club won't continue trading past the end of the football season. The move to Mayfield and Club Phoenix look better by the day, with more meetings held today.
It's taken a little longer than we had hoped, and it will be probably 10 days or so before we get a result.
While learning lessons the hard way in registered clubs, management has done it tough in the way of player negotiations as well. The Matthew Johns affair prompting a change in club policy.
We've been particularly concerned to try and bring the players to the fore in the negotiation.
And they're waiting for the biggest buy of all to make his decision.
We are making progress there, but we believe there's too much heat in the situation from a family point of view for us to press the issue. We will wait on Andrew.
Jim Callanan, NBN News. Hooker Danny Medeiros came to training and then left just as quickly. The hooker home with the flu, but is still expected to play on Sunday.
Bit of flu, I think, or a bit of a cold. No, I think he'll be all right. Dave Fairley had it yesterday and he was right 24 hours later, so hopefully Danny will be right for Sunday.
One who'll pack down with him on Sunday is Paul Rahihi, the big forward back in the team for Matt Parsons, who's out with a knee injury, and Rahihi is keen to make an impact.
Anyone who comes out the first grade wants to stay up there, so yeah, I'm looking forward to doing the same.
Winger Justin Ryder gets a recall, with Darren Albert ruled out again with his foot injury, now not responding to treatment.
It seems so. It seems like we might be without him for, at least another week or two.
It's taken much longer for Warren Ryan to equal the NRL coaching record with his 405th game this weekend, matching Bob Fulton's mark.
Yeah, well, that's just a product of old age, Jim.
Of more importance to Ryan is the result. Sitting in fourth, he knows a win and favourable results will have the Knights sitting strong in second spot.
Tried very hard this week to impress upon them, even more so than any game this year. I've probably worked on the importance of the game.
Jim Callanan, NBN News.
The body of the woman was found at the front door of this rented house at 24 Clonmene Circuit.
The police at Nelson's Bay were called to a house in Anna Bay this afternoon approximately 3 o'clock. At the present time we are now investigating a suspicious death on those premises.
Police closed off the street while detectives canvassed neighbours for information on the 40-year-old who moved into the house with her family 5 months ago. There aren't too many details of just what happened here this afternoon, but neighbours say they heard a man's screams coming from the house before the police were called. Once again, officers from Strike Force Rappo arrived to investigate. The task force was originally set up on May 17 after the double murder of 33-year-old Susan Kay and 37-year-old Joanne Tetron in the Newcastle suburb of Carrington. It was also called to the Mayfield home of Robin Denham, who was found strangled in her bedroom with a stocking earlier this week. Police say at this stage there are no links between the crimes. David McElwain, NBN News, Late Edition.
Back at the place where it all started today at Birmingham Gardens, Clayton Zane reflected on what's been a rapid rise up the ranks. Since leaving Newcastle for the Northern Spirit, the talented player is now based in Norway and recently cracked a spot in Australia's senior side, the Socceroos.
I was a little bit shocked to start with, but to get called in against the number 2 ranked team in the world was certainly a big step from where I was at.
Already starring for Australia at under-23 level, Zane can't wait to represent on home soil for the top national side against Paraguay on Friday.
It's always an honour to play for your country, but basically to play for the full senior national team on home soil in front of my family and friends should be a great experience.
And it doesn't stop there. After the 3-match series comes the run towards Sydney 2000.
It's quite hectic coming backwards and forwards at the moment, but like I say, the Olympics is my ultimate goal, and from there I'll just try and cement a place in the national team when I get given the opportunity.
And former teammate at Newcastle, Todd McManus, has won the Breakers Players Player Award. The defender capping off a fine year to beat strikers John Bonavolia and Andy Harper for the title.
Late yesterday, the 49-year-old man left North Arm Cove in his fiberglass runabout. He was last seen west of the Karua Bridge, believed to be heading back towards his holiday home at the Cove. This morning, an oyster farmer found his boat on the river. It was towed to the police mooring at Nelson Bay, while emergency services continued their search for the man. Meanwhile, on Lake Macquarie overnight, a luxury catamaran hit a submerged mooring pole in Black Ned's Bay at Swansea and began taking on water.
It's actually wedged onto the mooring pole and water's getting into the boat. We've got a couple of pumps at the moment trying to lower the water in the bilges.
A high tide and the weight of the water in the hull prevented full recovery of the vessel. This morning the owners further surveyed the damage while plans for salvaging it continued. Brooke Webster, NBN News. There was little fire crews could do to save the weatherboard premises. Fire had already taken hold of Paddington Place Childcare Centre.
Members of our main and western brigades were using breathing apparatus because of the dense smoke in there. It was quite hard to see at first.
This morning, as fire authorities and police surveyed the damage inside, the reality of the situation was taking its toll on centre owners and staff outside.
It's only a little small neighbourhood here, and it's part of their community, and we've been here for years now.
They say the children were just getting settled and working parents will now be left out in the cold as they try to find an alternative facility.
We'll have to put some ideas together, and perhaps we can look at a hall or something that we can set up something temporary at this stage.
Brooke Webster, NBN News.
The state CHS Rugby League trials have long been a breeding ground for the NRL. A scan around the grandstand indicated the high level of interest from Sydney clubs out to spot their future stars. The under-15 section of the championship kicked things off today with Northern taking on Western. While the Zones are out to win, the players have state selection on their minds as well, with the national championships to be played next month at Port Macquarie. That's where Northern halfback Clinton Foote is from, and he showed plenty of toe today in the opening match. But it was Western who had the better of the first half, with Dubbo's Chris RC crossing in the corner to grab a 4-0 lead. Northern toughened up around the middle, but to no avail, beaten 8-6 and up against a strong Sydney team tonight. Western meanwhile play Southern, who were thrashed 42-0 by the Sydney-siders. The state squad is chosen tomorrow after the final matches.
The Navy's 86-metre catamaran HMAS Jervis Bay cut an imposing sight off the port today. Capable of travelling at 45 knots, the vessel has been on active duty since September last year, ferrying personnel, equipment and supplies between Darwin and Dili in East Timor. It was one of the first to deliver troops onto the island. Since coming into service a year ago, it's transported 13,000 passengers, 500 vehicles and 4,000 tonnes of cargo, travelling between the two cities up to 3 times a week at the height of the Timor crisis.
When the difficulties in Timor arose and Australia was nominated as the lead nation for the Interfet forces, we moved a number of the troops into Timor.
The catamaran will come to rest at Forjac's floating dock tomorrow, after Forjac's won the tender for its annual survey, an $80,000 maintenance job for one of the Navy's most high-tech vessels.
We're going into Forjac's dock to allow the ship to be inspected, get to those parts of the ship that we can't normally get to while she's in the water.
Jervis Bay's home is Darwin, where it operates in support of 1 Brigade. The catamaran will be in Newcastle for 3 weeks. Catherine Turner, NBN News.
Judith Brown's battered body was discovered by her husband on Friday afternoon, slumped just inside the door of her Anna Bay home. The mother of 3 was struck several times in the head with an unknown implement. Today, a post-mortem revealing she was killed sometime that morning.
We believe that the woman, Judy Brown, died from a number of blows to the head. That has caused massive head trauma and a fractured skull, which has resulted in her death.
The search will be stepped up to try and locate the murder weapon. A task force of 12 police officers now assigned to the investigation. The family moved from Singleton earlier this year, with Judith quickly gaining employment in the area. A number of people have already been questioned over the murder, including her husband. Detectives say there is little evidence to suggest this murder is connected to 3 others in the Hunter over the last few weeks.
I can understand everyone's interest in that we have had 4 murders within a very short time frame within a reasonably confined geographical area. Other than that, really there's not a great deal more to connect them.
Helen Kapelos, NBN News.
In a meeting with Soccer Australia boss Stefan Kamaz today, David Hall said he was still in control of the Newcastle Breakers and that property company True Blue were not the owners. This comes just days after the club issued a statement saying Hall had quit as chairman and had nothing to do with the running of it. He also told Kamaz he had the financial documentation to prove it, and Soccer Australia want that by Wednesday. Meanwhile, the Northern New South Wales Soccer Federation has sought out investors to back its plan to have a team in the NSL should the Breakers fail to meet requirements needed to play next season. In fact, the Federation has had a plan in place for some time, after it first feared David Hall may not be able to meet owner obligations set down by Soccer Australia. But just who the owner they have in waiting is remains unclear.
They'll present themselves if and when the opportunity arises.
It's known businessman Con Constantine was keen to buy the club, but existing club debts were too high. Hall still owes the $250,000 NSL licence fee and creditors around $200,000, while the former consortium is still waiting for their $1.2 million from the original sale. With the memory of losing National League clubs before, the Federation decided that it had to do something.
We are aware that a number of players have been approached and we don't want them to go. We want to keep the team together in Newcastle.
It's thought if the Federation's plan is fulfilled, the current Breakers playing and coaching staff would be heavily involved. Switching Matthew Gidley from centre to 5'8" this weekend just doesn't add up for coach Warren Ryan, so Sean Rudder will steer the side around in the number 6 jumper.
If you look at Rudder, he's an ex-halfback with terrific, a terrific long pass, great peripheral vision.
Filling in after Matthew Johns tore a calf muscle against Brisbane, Rudder plugged the gap nicely. Newcastle has never won at Canberra, and while that doesn't daunt the coach, the possibility of snow does. After that match at Bruce, which was played in snow, Newcastle will train with wet footballs this week and look into wearing thermal gear to keep warm.
I told the backs we don't want anyone suffering hypothermia, they've got to wear warm clothes. I don't care if they wear tracksuits.
And the back line looks strong, so long as Adam McDougall, Gidley and Andrew Johns make it through Origin 3 unhurt. So to the forwards, Kennedy is named pending New South Wales duty, while utility back Daniel Abrahams is on the bench and may see some work in the back row. Prop Clinton O'Brien's early guilty plea to a careless tackle charge saw him miss suspension, but any indiscretion from here on will cost him.
Yeah, I just hope not to have another charge, as simple as that. So this doesn't really bother me, Jim, to tell you the truth.
As for Matthew Johns' calf muscle injury,
he says only a week, Matthew.
Doctors think it'll more likely be 2. Jim Callanan, NBN News.
It took many hours of training in the pool, but now several of the Knights have graduated and taken the big plunge.
You know, most of the time when we're not training, it's hard to find stuff to do, so this is good.
And the day could be considered acclimatisation to the cold as the team head off to chilly Canberra this weekend for their next NRL clash. But today training was far from their minds. Instead, they explored the oceans just out of the Nelson Bay headlands. And when they surfaced...
Mate, unbelievable. Some of the size of the fish down there. I'm glad they're not sharks, but...
But it's not the sharks that the players should be worried about. With several players down from their side this week, they should be more concerned about the Raiders. But while the weather conditions were fine, their only real concern was keeping warm. and who could do the best dolphin impersonation.
It seems to make your body feel real recovered and relaxed, so it's good.
Adam Harper, NBN News.
This doorstop ornament is similar to the one that went missing from the home of Judith Brown the day she was murdered, and detectives now believe it was the murder weapon used to bludgeon the Anna Bay mother of 3 to death last Friday. Today they renewed calls for help from the public.
We've still got police up there. We will be looking at specific areas, those that sort of appear more obvious to us, but obviously the public's moving around areas that we haven't even contemplated.
Earlier this week, an autopsy revealed the 41-year-old was violently bashed around the head several times, her wallet and handbag also stolen in the attack. Forensic pathologists will now re-examine the body to see if the injuries are consistent with those inflicted by a concrete object. The murder inquiry is just one of several investigations new local area commander John Trott will oversee when he joins the Lower Hunter Command next week.
The fortunate part is that I'm getting a complete briefing over the next several days from a number of sources, so I'll be in a very good position to actually take over as the commander.
He replaces acting LAC Sam Finlay, who returns to the Newcastle Command. Helen Kapelos, NBN News.
Over the Queen's Birthday long weekend, more than 50 competitors will take to the waters at Toronto to contest in the championship races.
It's spectacular to see, and the hydros particularly, things like this. I mean, they throw up a rooster tail and it's very entertaining and it's good to watch.
Several categories of boats ranging from the junior boats to the record holders will slip their hulls into the water.
They're quick, the big boys are doing 100 mile an hour, and the juniors are doing 25 or 20 mile an hour.
Meanwhile, at Barley Ranch Raceway at Raymond Terrace, more than 100 land-dwelling speedsters will muscle it out in the vintage dirt track and motocross titles.
This is the next most popular meeting to the national championships.
The competition brings out the older style bikes, some as early as 1975.
In some ways they're dinosaurs, but a lot of people like that. You know, they go back to the old British thumpers. You know, we have some bikes that are pre-65 even. You know, and the oldest rider's 75 years old. And you know, they really do ride it with enthusiasm.
But after years of hard riding, some bikes may require a little attention if they're to make the starting lineup.
The top of the table clash was just that early, the two hookers Brett Clements and Adrian McNabb coming to grips. While the Waratah rake caught up with Curry lock John Jones as well. That cost the visitors 2 points, care of Rick Ryan's boot. But McNabb helped deliver another blow, this time on the scoreboard. Running off Stu Collins, he put lock Phil Morgan over and it was 6-2. If you can't go through them, go over them. And a horror bounce for Waratah turned up perfectly for Danny Linane, who raced away untouched for Curry. 6-all. When John Jones smashed through the Tars' defence, he linked up for Linane's second as the Bulldogs led by 6. The Cheetahs returned serve through second rower Jamie Johnson and it was level once again. After half-time, Linane was again in the middle of things, offloading for Scott Kime to race away and make it 20-12. Curry eventually hanging on to win 26-24. Matthew Johns can clearly remember the day he was picked to make his first grade debut for Newcastle back in 1993. Even then, he was determined to be a one-team man, in the NRL at least, hence the decision to play out his career in England for Wigan.
You know, of course, things like the 97 grand final stand out, and I believe we can do it again this year, you know, and that's a great goal for me.
While the Northern Eagles headed the list of Australian clubs after Johns' signature, he also turned down the lure of rugby union. But it would always be hard to play against the red and blue. With state and Australian representation behind him, nothing beats the memory of 1997 and that grand final win, a feeling he'd desperately love to leave Newcastle with at the end of the year.
If we can do it, it'll just be a dream come true.
As for his return, nothing's planned past his 2-year deal with Wigan.
You just never know. I might go over there and we just absolutely love it and set up and that become home.
Jim Callanan, NBN News.